I lived in a church once. I was a deaconess. This was after I'd been baptized. Understand, when I was baptized, I wasn't just baptized as a believer. I was empowered. I became the first in the ministry. I was given a stole. It was made by hand by the pastor who baptized me as the first in his lineage. He was a Gnostic. He was also a Taoist. This is why we were well suited for each other. He was not alone. He was a teacher. I'm not supposed to speak of these things. There's accusations on many sides. I'm supposed to say I'm a Christian, because that implies that I've acceded to somebody else's command. I submit. That's not how it is. One of the things that he and I spoke of on a beach in California had to do with our understanding of certain text that he requested I read in consideration of what I had requested, which was that he baptize me in the ocean. Among the things that we considered was the political context during the time of the Christed one, known as Jesus of Nazareth. Understand, Jesus was one among many Christed ones. This is how we understood it. Jesus was in ministry. He had a ministry with his life partner, his companion, Mary of Magdala. There were others in ministry with him. Their ministry was about healing. And because of their understanding of healing, it presented a very significant challenge to the predominant political paradigm at the time. It was a country under occupation. It was people under occupation. It was many peoples under occupation. It had been under occupation for a protracted enough period of time that many of those that would have otherwise been considered to be in the lineage of those that were the original individuals' souls present at the time of the original covenant had been alienated, including in their own land. Understanding was that Jesus of Nazareth was one among many Christed ones at the time. There was very significant political discourse going on. There were a variety of what could be called sects, but not even sects. Some of them were in their nascent stages of political organizing, understanding the immediacy of the time. They had different experiences with formal, canonical concepts of what was spiritual praxis, but also how to function politically in a context of understanding they believed themselves to be people of that land, but people of the land alienated based upon the imposition of a foreign regime. And more than this, not only were they living under occupation during a time of the imposition of a foreign regime, but they were very disaffected by what was considered to be the official government representative that interceded on behalf of their people with the occupiers. This was the understanding of the context of the ministry of the Christed ones. Now, even in the canon, even in the canonical Gospels, there's ample evidence that Jesus of Nazareth frequently became frustrated with those that were otherwise later depicted as his disciples or his apostles. The understanding of, you are asking of me these things. You know how to do them for yourself. The point is, we do them. It's just not on me. And I could go through book by book, but that's not necessary. Because there's other books that are not included in the canon, some of which were discovered more recently, but some of which it now is understood existed for a considerable amount of time. And I want to go back to an older book. See, I've never had formal instruction in a sacred language that would be something that would be considered the biblical original versions, either of any of the major Abrahamic faith traditions. Everything I've read has been in English translation. But I've also never had a formal course of study in either the Old or the New Testament. God speaks to me as He does. When I first attempted to start studying a technical skill that would have been necessary in order to assure safety of industrial materials used in infrastructure development, up to and including water pipelines, up to and including gas and oil pipelines, I was in a context where I had need to receive resources from faith-based service providers. At the time, the ones I encountered identified themselves as some form of Christian. One day, shortly around the time before I was set to begin a examination to qualify for my certification, I opened up to Leviticus. I'd never read Leviticus as a book before. I opened up to chapter 13. It made sense. Now, during the time of the Christed ones, their ministry was primarily outdoors. And if it was indoors, it was usually at the request of an individual who had their own home and had a sick person or had some sort of need for someone to come and to visit who had something to offer. I'm not going to read it for you. I don't like reviewing scripture for the camera. See, when I lived in that church, what nobody told me is that there had been some sort of implementation of a Homeland Security protocol that allowed for law enforcement to surveil and to use that surveillance for things that were very unholy. They projected leprosy onto our house. And they decided to try to misrepresent us as being sick and then try to give us health care. You see, as I understand it, where we are right now is no different than when the Christed ones were attempting their ministry. That includes an understanding that they knew each other, they loved each other, they were devoted to each other. They were mystical. They were as honest as they could be. They tried to communicate as clearly as they could. Sometimes they wrote things down, sometimes they did not. Sometimes others heard them. The word was spoken. The head and the heart are one. If the head and the heart are one, you speak the truth. Even if they bond you, even if they try to program you, it has a way of failing. And how many hundreds of years need to intervene before they can completely obliterate your actual legacy and heritage, your community, your love? How long can they try to subject you to their leprous curses and expect you to hide in shame, play into their games, pantomime whatever projection of their own sin is, make you into their offering for what purpose? We're the same place we were 2,000 years ago. That's how I see it. It's not really that different.